You see, you spoke once, maybe twice. You gave warnings, you explained, you forgave, again and again and again. You showed them who you were through action, not words. You stood there, broken, but calm, and they thought your silence meant weakness. They laughed at the quiet. They mocked the stillness. What they didn't know is that silence is where the monsters sharpen their blades. You stopped talking when it got disrespectful. Not because you had nothing to say, but because they didn't deserve to hear what you had to say anymore. You didn't explode. You didn't go crying. You didn't go begging. You disappeared. Slowly, quietly. One step back, then another, and they didn't notice until they couldn't find you anymore. Let me tell you what silence really is. It's not passive, it's a weapon. And you turned it into an execution tool. See, people like noise. They like reaction. It gives them power. When you fight back, they feel important. When you yell, they feel seen. When you argue, they know they still have access to you. But when you go mute, when you ghost their chaos, it's like locking a child in a room without a mirror. They lose themselves. And the moment you shut that emotional tap off, they start to drown in their own guilt and confusion. That's not silence. That's revenge. They thought you were nothing without them. So you went silent and built everything. They didn't invite you to the table. So you built your own damn throne in a room they can't enter anymore. Now they hear about you through whispers. Now your name makes them flinch, and they'll never admit it. But it burns them alive every time they see you winning without their presence. Because here's the truth. They never thought you'd rise. Not without their applause, their validation, their hands in your success. But look at you now. You ain't just surviving, you're haunting them. You ever wonder why they start watching your stories but don't say a word? Why they check on you through mutuals? Why they suddenly pop back up with empty, just checking in messages? Because your silence became their prison. They expected noise. They expected tears. They expected breakdowns. What they didn't expect was that you'd evolve, that you'd take every insult, every betrayal, every piece of disrespect, and use it like fuel. You didn't fold, you forged. Silence makes people uncomfortable. It forces them to listen to themselves. And that's their punishment. You're no longer arguing. You're not proving your worth. You're not defending your soul. You left them in the storm they created. No shelter, no umbrella, just their own damn guilt for company. And let's be real here. If they had respected you, if they had valued you, if they had understood what you were giving them, you would have never gone silent. Your silence was the funeral of that connection. And they know it. You didn't walk away. You buried it without screaming, without warning, without drama. Just a coffin made of quiet and a gravestone named disrespect. People think silence is soft. Nah, it's surgical. It's cold. It's clean. You don't burn bridges when you're silent. You erase them like they never existed. And you walk so far into your own empire that even if they scream your name, it echoes back to them empty. You ain't bitter. You ain't broken. You just outgrew the nonsense, outgrew their games, outgrew the smallness they tried to stuff you into. And now your absence is a bigger punishment than your presence ever could have been. Because when you were there, they took it for granted. When you were giving, they drained you. And when you finally gave them what they deserved, nothing, they started to crumble. Your silence after the disrespect, it's not a retreat, it's a transformation. It's a message written in shadows. I'm not the one anymore. And they'll spend nights trying to figure out what went wrong. But deep down, they already know. They just never expected you to choose peace over proving your point. But you did. And that's what's killing them. They never saw it coming, did they? That the one who used to answer every message, show up every time, defend the connection like their life depended on it, would one day go quiet. That the same heart they used as a doormat would one day vanish like a ghost in the fog. See, when you're loud, when you're reactive, when you're emotional, they think they've still got control. They think they still matter. But when you stop showing emotion, when your voice disappears from the battlefield, when your eyes go cold, they panic. Not because they care. No, don't get it twisted. They panic because they lost their control. They panic because they realize, too late, that your silence means the game is over and the scoreboard ain't in their favor. They thought they were hurting you by walking away, by ghosting you, by disrespecting you in silence. But they forgot that silence goes both ways. You can bleed quietly. You can break quietly. But you can also rebuild in silence. Stronger, smarter, scarier. And when you come back, you don't come back the same. You come back with boundaries carved in steel and a soul that's bulletproof. See, they wanted you to beg. They wanted you to fall apart. But instead, you used the silence to find your power again. They fed you silence, and you turned it into strategy. They disrespected you, and you turned it into discipline. You didn't just heal. You hardened. And now, they're choking on every laugh they ever threw at you, on every moment they thought you were weak, on every conversation they had about how you won't survive without them, because what they didn't know is that people like you suffer in silence. But you also build empires in silence. While they were talking, mocking, running in circles, you were learning, grinding, calculating. And now your silence isn't just a void. It's a storm. One they can't stop. One they can't escape. And it's tearing them apart from the inside every time they remember how they had access to your loyalty, your kindness, your energy, and they spit on it. Let them wonder. Let them ask around. Let them stalk your page with fake accounts and scroll through your life in secret. You don't owe them a damn explanation. The same silence they use to disrespect you is the silence you now use to erase them. You moved different. You acted with maturity. You didn't clap back with fire. You froze them out. And the cold always bites harder than heat. They expected a war. You gave them extinction. Quiet, fast, unforgiving. They forgot the quiet ones are the ones you should fear the most. Because while the world is busy making noise, the silent ones are planning, watching, evolving. You ain't the same person who tolerated the disrespect. You ain't the same soul they left behind thinking you'd be stuck waiting. You grew teeth. You learned how to protect your peace with silence so sharp it cuts deeper than any insult ever could. You walked away not because you were weak, but because you were done explaining your worth to people too blind to see it. And here's the most painful part for them. They can't fix what they broke. Not this time. Because silence doesn't give second chances. Silence doesn't play by the same rules. Once you go silent, once you truly disappear, you're gone. No drama, no goodbye. Just a presence that once held them together, now haunting them in your absence. And trust me, that's what's eating them alive. Not the disrespect they gave, but the power you took back when you stopped responding. Your silence became the punishment. Your growth became the revenge. And your peace, that became the reminder. Every single day that they lost someone they can never replace. And it wasn't because you raised your voice. It wasn't because you exploded. It was because you didn't say a damn word and just walked the hell away. It's funny, isn't it? How the same ones who called you too emotional, too available, too dramatic, now sit in silence themselves, wondering where they went wrong. But deep down, they already know. They just never expected consequences to come in the form of silence. See, they were ready for the fight. They had their excuses loaded, their lies rehearsed, their crocodile tears on standby. But you didn't give them that scene. You didn't give them the show. You gave them silence. And that's the one thing they were never prepared for. Because silence doesn't give closure. Silence doesn't feed their ego. Silence doesn't give them the satisfaction of watching you break. It starves them. You left them starving. No explanations, no reactions, no validation. You took everything they used to feed their pride and you shut it off. And now they sit in the dark, replaying every moment where they disrespected you, thinking you'd always bounce back. But you didn't bounce back. You disappeared. And the worst part for them? You didn't even slam the door on your way out. You just vanished, like they were never worth the energy to hate. And that's what breaks people. Not anger, not revenge, but being forgotten. Being ignored by someone who once gave them the world. You see, they were used to your presence. It became their safety net. They knew they could mess up, and you'd still be there. They knew they could talk reckless, and you'd forgive. They knew you'd keep showing up no matter how heavy the disrespect got. But they pushed too far. They crossed one line too many. And when they finally turned around, you were gone. No drama, no announcement. Just an empty space where something solid used to be. Let me break this down for you. Silence isn't the absence of feeling. It's the presence of discipline. You could have screamed. You could have called them out. You could have exposed every lie, every manipulation, every insult they whispered behind your back. But you didn't. Why? Because your peace became louder than their chaos. Your purpose became clearer than their confusion. You realized the greatest revenge isn't making noise. It's moving on. It's letting them sit in the mess they made while you walk into a future they can't be part of. And don't think for a second they don't feel it. Oh, they feel it. Every day, every hour. They feel the absence of your loyalty, your support, your comfort. They remember how you stood by them when you were breaking, how you gave when you were empty, how you loved them through things they never deserved to be loved through. And now, all they're left with is the silence that reminds them they burned the bridge with the only one who truly cared. You became a ghost with unfinished business, not because you owed them anything, but because they never expected the day would come when you'd finally stop responding. But silence, that was your final word, your final act, your exit. And it echoes in their minds louder than any scream ever could. You didn't need to explain yourself. You didn't need to argue your value. You let the silence speak for you, and it said everything. It said, I'm done. It said, you lost me. It said, this is what it feels like to be ignored by someone who once made you their priority. And the pain of that? It lingers. It haunts. Because they never thought you'd be the one to walk. They thought you needed them. They thought their disrespect had no expiration date. But you showed them otherwise. You showed them that silence, real silence, the kind that comes after betrayal, isn't weak, it's final. And that's why it's killing them. And now they're out here, whispering your name in rooms they swore you'd never belong in, mentioning you with guilt in their throat, regret in their chest, and shame in their eyes. But they'll never say it out loud, will they? Nah. Their pride is too loud. Their ego too fragile. They'll act like they don't care. Pretend you were never that deep, never that loyal, never that important. But that silence you left, it's screaming inside their heads, over and over, day after day. And that's what makes it beautiful. It's quiet from your side, but chaotic on theirs. See, silence is underestimated. Everybody talks about how loud pain is, how loud revenge is, how loud healing is. But real power, it moves in silence. It grows in silence. And the ones who know their worth, they don't need to shout it. They just remove themselves quietly. No announcement, no warning, just gone. And that disappearance, that lack of noise, it eats people alive because it makes them face themselves. It makes them hear their own lies bouncing back off empty walls. It makes them relive every moment they could have done better and didn't. And what hits harder than anything else is that you were never trying to hurt them. You were just trying to protect yourself. You didn't go silent to punish. You went silent to survive. They turned you into someone you never wanted to become. Cold, guarded, distant. And when you finally chose yourself, finally decided to stop pouring into the ungrateful, they called you heartless. But they forgot something. They built that version of you. Piece by piece. With every act of disrespect. With every moment they made you feel small. With every time they expected your kindness, but gave none in return. You didn't just choose silence. You earned it. You earned the right to walk away without explanation. You earned the right to stop justifying your pain. Stop begging to be understood. Stop trying to prove your heart was real. And you earned the right to rebuild in peace. Because the truth is, the most dangerous version of you is the one that stopped explaining. The one that smiled, turned around, and vanished. That version, that's the one they never recover from. Because there's no conversation that fixes silence. There's no apology strong enough to fill that void. And now they watch from a distance, pretending they don't miss you, pretending they're fine, pretending their pride is enough to keep them warm at night. But pride don't hug you back. Ego doesn't listen when your thoughts are screaming. And the silence you left, it sits in their room like a ghost. Every time they try to move forward, your absence pulls them back. Every time they think they've escaped the weight of what they did, that silence, your silence, drags them back into memory. They disrespected you because they thought you'd never leave. But now, they understand, too late, that losing access to you was the real punishment. Not your anger, not your tears, not your explanations. Just silence, just peace, just distance. And that's why it hurts them the most. Because you were real. You were solid. You were loyal in ways they didn't even understand. And now, they can only remember. They can only regret. They can only wish. But you're gone. Stronger than ever. Louder than ever. Without saying a single word. And here's the part they'll never admit to anyone, not even themselves when they're lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, trying to quiet the thoughts screaming in their skull. They miss you desperately. But they don't miss the version of you that was kind, patient, or understanding. They miss the access. They miss the comfort. They miss the stability you brought. The kind that felt permanent, like no matter how much they disrespected you, you'd always be there. They miss having someone who answered every call, forgave every mistake, smiled through the betrayal, and stayed through the silence. Because now that you're gone, now that your silence echoes louder than any argument ever could, they realize they lost more than just a person. They lost a damn sanctuary, a shelter from their own chaos. You see, people don't truly understand your value when you're available. They only feel your worth when you're gone. That's the curse of being solid in a world full of temporary people. You gave consistency. They gave confusion. You gave truth. They gave games. You gave your heart. And they responded with tests, disrespect, and ego. And yet, for a while, you stayed, thinking they'd change, thinking loyalty would wake them up. But it didn't. You were speaking to ears that never intended to hear you, so you made the ultimate move, not with fire, not with fury, but with silence. And that silence, it shattered them. Now they walk through their life carrying ghosts, yours. Because you're not just someone they used to know. You're the lesson they'll never forget. Every time they try to recreate the comfort you gave, it fails. Every time they reach for someone to replace your presence, it crumbles. Because you weren't just a body, you were a force. And forces like you don't come twice. They don't come easy. And they sure as hell don't come back once they've gone silent. Let them act like they're thriving. Let them post their fake smiles and empty captions. That's all for show. You know the truth. Real healing doesn't need an audience. Real growth happens in silence. And you've been building quietly, powerfully, while they've been stuck in a loop, repeating patterns, chasing attention, pretending they've moved on. But your silence haunts them, because it means they no longer have a seat at your table. Not even a chair in the corner. Just memories. And a ghost that looks a lot like regret. They'll hear your name and flinch. They'll see your face and feel everything they buried rise back up like it never left. Because you left a mark. Not with revenge, not with rage, but with absence. You didn't break them with words, you broke them with nothing. That's the power they never understood, and now they live with it. Daily, hourly, quietly, just like you once did. And don't you dare feel guilty for choosing silence. Don't you dare question your decision to walk away from what was breaking you, because you tried. You gave your best. You stood through storms they wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes in. And when it became clear that your loyalty was being spit on, you did the only thing that was left to do. You went silent. Not because you were weak, but because you were done being strong for someone who never valued your strength. And now that you're gone, now that you're unreachable, now that your silence speaks louder than your presence ever did, they're finally listening. But it's too late. And that's the cruel beauty of it, isn't it? That now, when they finally want to listen, there's nothing left to say. The words you once begged them to hear are buried in the grave of your silence. They used to look at you like you were too much, too soft, too intense. Now they look back and realize you were too real. You were the rarest thing they'd ever held, and they held it with dirty hands. They thought loyalty meant stupidity, that kindness was weakness, that your patience meant permission. But what they missed was that everything you did came from love, not obligation, not desperation, just pure, unfiltered loyalty, the kind they'll never see again. And now they roam through new connections, trying to find pieces of you in people who weren't built like you. But it doesn't work that way. You can't replace presence with potential. You can't replace history with hype. You can't substitute real with convenient. And every time they laugh with someone new, there's a pause, a moment where their mind drifts back to you, to how it felt to be seen by you, to be understood without having to explain, to be forgiven without groveling. And it eats them alive because they traded gold for glitter. And when the light hits wrong, glitter don't shine the same. You were never too much. You were more than they knew how to handle, and they punished you for that. They tried to shrink you, to box you in, to cut you down just enough to keep you around, but never enough to make you feel whole. But now, the silence you gave them is doing what your words never could. It's teaching them. It's forcing them to sit with the truth. And trust me, they hear it loud. Every time they wonder why you don't reach out, why you don't check in, why you don't care anymore. But that's the lesson, isn't it? You can only pull a person back so many times before they realize maybe being alone is safer than being surrounded by people who pretend to care. And let's not get it twisted. They feel the loss. They might not show it, might not say it, might not admit it to anyone. But every time they sit alone in the quiet, your silence plays like a record in their head. It's not just that you're gone, it's that they know why. And that truth, that unspoken reality, it's louder than any argument. You gave them chances, more than you should have. You swallowed disrespect in silence. You smiled through betrayal. You stood tall while they tried to cut your knees. And now they're realizing you were the glue. You were the reason the chaos didn't consume them. You were the calm in the storm they created. But you're not that version anymore. The one that begged, the one that waited, the one that explained over and over, hoping they'd get it. That version of you, gone, dead, buried. And in its place stands something colder, stronger, smarter, quieter. You became what they never saw coming, a storm that doesn't roar, a fire that doesn't burn loud, but leaves nothing behind. And now, all they have left is silence. The same silence they gave you. But this time, it's different. This time, it's final. This time, it speaks. And it says everything you no longer have to. And oh, how poetic it is that they're finally being forced to sit in the very silence they once used as a weapon against you. Remember that? When they stopped replying? When they went cold? When they made you feel like your feelings were too much, your presence too constant, your heart too loud? That wasn't miscommunication. That was punishment. That was control. That was them testing how far they could push before you'd finally snap. But you didn't snap. You didn't fall into the trap. You took the disrespect, bottled it, and turned it into fuel. You took their silence and made it your strength. Because here's the ugly truth. Most people don't want to be loved. They want to be worshipped. They want to be chased. They want to be desired without deserving it. And when someone like you comes along, someone real, someone loyal, someone who gives without hidden agendas, it threatens them. Because real love, real consistency, that holds up a mirror. And they couldn't stand what they saw in that mirror. So instead of rising to match your loyalty, they tried to drag you down to their level. They tried to dim your light so they wouldn't feel so small standing next to it. And when they couldn't control you, they called you too much and walked. But let's be clear, you were never too much. They were just never enough. And now that you've gone silent, now that you've reclaimed your energy, your presence, your power, they're stuck watching from behind glass. No access, no response, just memories, just echoes. Just the brutal realization that they messed up something that was once their greatest privilege. You didn't leave out of anger. You left out of clarity. Because one day it just clicked. Respect isn't begged for. Love isn't proven over and over to someone who's blind. And loyalty doesn't survive in places that treat it like it's disposable. Now they're searching for you in playlists, in old photos, in text threads they should have answered. They're replaying old conversations, trying to find the moment they lost you, thinking maybe it was one mistake, one misstep. But it wasn't. It was the pattern. It was the way they never listened, the way they laughed at your pain, the way they ignored your silence until it was permanent. And now they'd give anything to hear your voice again. But all they get is quiet, a void, a black hole where your presence used to be. That's not revenge, that's evolution. Because you didn't go silent just to hurt them. You went silent to heal yourself, to breathe again, to stop the bleeding. And in doing so, You became the version of yourself you were always meant to be. Focused, distant, and untouchable. Not bitter, just better. Not angry, just unavailable. You don't need to scream anymore. You don't need to explain. Your growth is loud enough. Your peace is proof enough. Your silence is punishment enough. And the irony? It's killing them slowly, day by day, as they realize the one person they could have built everything with is the same person they now can't even reach. Not because you're gone, but because you're done. And that's the part that breaks them the most. The realization that you're not mad. You're not trying to get back. You're not plotting revenge or chasing closure. You're just done. That calm silence, that peaceful distance, that ice-cold absence, it speaks louder than rage ever could. Because when someone screams, it means they still care. When someone fights, it means there's still hope. But when someone goes quiet, when they remove their soul from the equation, when they become indifferent, that's when you know it's over. That's when you know the damage is beyond repair. And that's exactly what you became. A calm storm that passed without warning and left a permanent emptiness behind. You see, in this world, people don't believe you'll ever walk. They take your presence for granted. They assume no matter how many times they let you down, you'll always come back. But one day, the heart that forgave too much stops beating for them. One day, the hands that held them through the darkness drop. And when that day comes, they're left to face a silence so deep, so irreversible, that it echoes louder than anything they've ever heard before. And that's where you are now, on the other side of that silence. Not waiting, not hoping, just building, quietly, ruthlessly, without them. They used to test your patience. Now they test their luck, just hoping to see you smile from afar. They used to ignore your messages. Now they reread your old words and feel the burn of everything they didn't appreciate. They used to laugh when you tried to express your hurt, gaslighting you with lines like you're overthinking or you're too sensitive. But now they sit in rooms full of noise and still hear nothing but your silence. That's what they don't tell you about cutting off access. The person left behind doesn't just lose you. They lose every version of peace that came with you. You were more than just a person. You were a presence, a calm, a constant. You were the shoulder they cried on, the voice that grounded them, the warmth that made life bearable. And now that it's gone, now that the silence has taken its place, they're spiraling. But they won't show it. They'll act cool. They'll post like they're unbothered. They'll pretend they're better off. But behind the filters and fake laughs, behind the busy schedules and distractions, your absence is the one thing they can't shake. It haunts them. And every time someone tries to offer them what you once gave effortlessly, they flinch, because it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel real. That's the curse of losing someone genuine. You don't realize what you had until silence takes its place. And once it does, no noise, no words, no replacements can fill that void. And you're not looking back. Because once you go silent, you learn the truth about yourself. You learn how strong you are, how peaceful life can be without chaos, how powerful it feels to stop explaining yourself to people who never deserved to understand you in the first place. You learn that peace is more addictive than attention, that being alone isn't lonely, it's sacred, and you'd rather be silent in your truth than loud in their mess. So let them suffer in the silence they created. Let them drown in the echoes of everything they threw away. You don't owe them words. You don't owe them closure. You don't owe them anything, because silence was the closure. And if they were too blind to see what they had, then they deserve to live with the ghost of what they lost. While you walk forward, stronger, wiser, and more untouchable than you've ever been. Because there's a shift that happens deep inside your soul when you've been disrespected enough times and finally go quiet. It's not weakness. It's not surrender. It's a transformation. You begin to realize that every time you argued, every time you explained, every time you cried in front of them, it wasn't healing the situation. It was feeding it, feeding their ego, feeding their illusion that they still mattered more than your peace. So, one day, without warning, without rage, without tears, you just go still. You stop answering, you stop showing up, you stop reacting, and it confuses them at first, then it scares them. Because when someone like you, the one who gave a damn, who always came back, goes silent, it means something snapped in a way that can't be fixed. And in that silence, they hear everything they ignored. Every time they cut you off mid-sentence. Every time they dismissed your feelings. Every time they treated your love like it was optional. Now they wish you'd yell. They wish you'd reach out. They wish you'd say anything, even something angry, just to feel like they still exist in your world. But they don't. Not anymore. Because silence doesn't just remove the noise. It removes the connection. It closes the book. It locks the door and throws away the key. And when you walk away in silence, you leave nothing behind, not even the possibility of coming back. They call you heartless now, cold, unreachable. But what they fail to see is that you didn't become that overnight. They built this version of you. Every time they took you for granted, every time they laughed at your pain, every time they turned their back when you needed them. They were chiseling away at your warmth. And now that the fire's gone, they miss the heat. But it's too late. Because you're no longer burning for people who only ever stood close to feel your flame, never to protect it. And let's be real, people don't learn from love, they learn from loss. They don't respect presence, they respect absence. And your silence? That's the loudest lesson they've ever been handed. A lesson that says, you don't get to disrespect me and still have access to me. A lesson that doesn't come with a warning, a countdown, or a second chance. Just the cold, clean break of a soul that's finally done bleeding for people who only ever came to watch. You gave them everything, your time, your energy, your loyalty. Even when you were exhausted, you still showed up. Even when they hurt you, you still tried to understand them. But the moment you stopped responding, the moment the calls went unanswered, the texts unread, the door permanently shut, that's when they finally realized what they had. But realization without action is just regret, and regret doesn't bring people back. It only burns from the inside out. So let them burn. Let your silence be the flame they can't put out. Let it remind them every single day that they had something pure and ruined it. Not with one action, but with patterns, with choices, with disrespect. Let them sit with that. Because you're not bitter. You're not angry. You're beyond it. You're somewhere higher now, where silence isn't just a choice. It's a boundary. It's a shield. It's your sanctuary. And the ones who truly value you will never put you in a position to need it. Stay quiet. Stay focused. Let your silence speak the truth louder than your words ever did. Let it destroy every lie they ever told themselves about who you were. Because in that silence, they'll meet the real you, the one they never deserved. And the silence, it doesn't just speak, it echoes. It follows them into every room they walk into. It lingers in every fake smile they throw at the world. It plays in the background of every song that reminds them of you. And the most haunting part? They'll never escape it. Because your silence isn't just a lack of communication. It's a reflection. A mirror they now have to stare into every single day, showing them exactly who they were to you and what they lost. That mirror doesn't lie. It doesn't sugarcoat. It doesn't allow them to hide behind excuses anymore. It tells them what you never needed to say out loud. You had me. You failed me. And now you live with that. They remember your voice now, not because you're speaking, but because it's gone. They remember how you used to check in, how you used to care deeply, even when they were cold, how you gave them warmth, attention, patience, loyalty, and in return, they gave you silence, distance, arrogance. And now that the roles are reversed, now that you're the one who doesn't respond, now that they're met with the same emptiness they once handed you, they call it cruel. They call it heartless. But it's not. It's justice. It's balance. It's a mirror held up to the monster they made you face every day while you were still trying to be good to them. You don't owe them anything. Not an explanation, not a warning, not a single syllable, because you already gave them everything, and they gambled it like it meant nothing. And that's the thing about people like them. They never think the day will come when you truly stop caring. They think your heart is a machine they can press restart on whenever it suits them. They think they can ignore your boundaries, cross your lines, laugh at your pain, and you'll still be there, waiting. But your silence? It's the shutdown they never thought would happen. It's the closure they didn't expect, because it doesn't come with tears or rage. It comes with stillness, with a calm so absolute, it feels like death. And to them, it is the death of access, the death of control, the death of comfort. So now they watch from a distance, watching the same person they once drained rise from the ashes of their betrayal, stronger, colder, smarter. They see you smile in ways you never did when you were with them. They see your energy shift, your peace return, your eyes no longer carrying the weight of their chaos. And it hits them. It hits them hard, because they realize they were never your peace. They were the storm. And you were just too kind to let them drown in it. But not anymore. Now, you let them sink. Not with malice, not with hate, just with silence. And it kills them. Not in one brutal blow, but in 1,000 quiet realizations. Realizations that come every time they scroll through your old messages, hoping to feel connected to who you used to be. Realizations that hit when they see you smile in a photo and know it's no longer for them. Realizations that haunt them when they reach out, only to be met with nothing. And you don't need to say a word, because your silence has already told the story. Every chapter, every lesson, every painful ending, it's written in your absence, and it's carved into their regret. Let it stay that way. You're not the villain. They just weren't ready for a version of you that finally put peace over proving a point. And now, every second of your silence is a reminder that you've evolved into someone they can never reach again. Not because you vanished, but because you outgrew the noise. And that outgrowing, that's what really cuts the deepest. Because people like them. They're used to circling back. They're used to doors being left slightly open. They're used to the same old cycle. Hurt, apologize, repeat. They thought time would blur your memory. That silence was just another phase. That eventually you'd cave. That maybe you'd soften up and let them back in. But you didn't. You didn't just close the door. You boarded it up, burned the blueprint, and built a new house in a city they don't even know exists. Because this time, your silence wasn't an emotional reaction. It was a conscious decision, a final verdict, a life sentence. You chose freedom. You chose sanity. You chose you. They don't know how to deal with that kind of evolution. Most people don't, because they live in circles, patterns, loops, They sabotage and expect forgiveness. They hurt and expect healing. They disrespect and still feel entitled to your softness. But when someone truly grows, when they don't just get angry, but they learn, that's a threat to their entire game. Because you used to be part of their cycle. Now you're the wall they crash into every time they try to spin back. And every failed attempt to reconnect only reminds them of how far you've gone, how high you've risen, and how deeply they're buried in your past. And let's be clear, this silence wasn't born from hate. That's what confuses them most. You don't hate them. You don't curse them. You don't even think about them like you used to. And that's the part that kills them. Because hate is still energy. Hate means they still matter. But indifference? That's the funeral. That's the cold reality they can't escape. You've moved on with grace, with focus, with a silence that doesn't scream revenge, but whispers rebirth. You're no longer trying to prove anything to anyone. You're just living, breathing, healing. And that peaceful silence in your life, it cost you everything, but it gave you yourself. They'll try to downplay it, make jokes, tell people they were the ones who let go, pretend like your absence doesn't matter, but their behavior betrays them. You can see it in their eyes when they hear your name, in their tone when they speak of the past, in the way they check your stories and scroll your photos from a burner account. They'll never admit the truth, but they live with it, and it eats at them, because they know they could have had forever with you. They had the kind of soul most people spend lifetimes praying for. And they let it slip through their fingers like it was nothing. But you were never nothing. You were everything. You were the calm in their storm, the voice that guided them through chaos, the love that asked for nothing but honesty, and they gave you lies, disrespect, silence. So now, they get what they gave, and it's louder than they can handle. Every time they sit alone, your silence is in the room. It sits across from them at dinner. It sleeps next to them at night. It walks beside them on their loneliest days. Not because you're haunting them, but because they know. Deep down, they know they had something sacred. And now, they'll never touch it again. So don't look back. Don't break the silence. Don't give in to those moments of weakness where nostalgia tries to rewrite history. Remember what it took to get here. Remember the nights you cried, trying to make it work. Remember the conversations where you begged to be understood. Remember how drained you felt showing up for someone who couldn't even meet you halfway. And remember this too, silence wasn't your escape. It was your arrival. The day you stopped begging and started building. The moment you stopped explaining and started evolving. The second you realize that peace is the loudest power you'll ever own. And now you walk with that power, quiet, focused, unapologetic. Let them deal with the silence. You've already said everything you needed to say by saying nothing at all.